اے میری طرح نہ کیسے گر کے ہو گئی تیری بھی کم کمر، زندان کھل گیا ہے میں لے کے تجھ کو شام سے واپس نہ جا سکا، بابا کو کیا بتاؤں میں اب جا کے کربلا، کرتے میں دفن کر کے، کرتے میں دفن کر کے بنائی تیری لحد، عابد کو خون رلائے گا یہ درد عمر بھر، زندان کھل گیا ہے، او زندان کھل گیا ہے، سکینہ وطن چلو، سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا چھوٹی سی قبر پر، وہ رخصت حسین پہ زینب کا امتحان، ایسی ہی آج پھر سے ہے زندان کا سما، سجاد ہو رہا ہے، سجاد ہو رہا ہے جدا ایسے بہن سے، اٹھتا ہے رو کے قبر سے گرتا ہے قبر پر، زندان کھل گیا ہے، سکینہ وطن چلو، سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا چھوٹی سی قبر پر، مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا، مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا تربت پہ بہن کی، جیسے حسین تھا گرا اکبر کی لاش پر، زندان کھل گیا ہے، سکینہ وطن چلو، سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا چھوٹی سی قبر پر، صلوات۔
محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، آخر تو سفر ہونا ہے اس دار مہن سے، دو باتیں تو کر لینے دے بھائی کو بہن سے، آتی ہے میری سانت میری لاڈلی خاور، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، تو لاکھ ستمگر ہے مگر کام یہ کر جا، اے سمر میرے سینے سے کچھ دیر اتر جا، مر جائے گی اس حال میں دیکھا جو برادر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، بھائی کی محبت میں وہ بیتاب ہوئی ہے، خیمے سے بہت تیز وہ مقتل کو چلی ہے، سر سے میری بینا کے اتر جائے نہ چادر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، دیدار کرے وہ میرا میں بھی اسے دیکھوں، زخمی ہوں مگر آخری تعظیم تو کر لوں، اے شمر بہن ہے یہ میری ماں کے برابر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، زینب چلی جائے تو ستم چاہے جو دانا، ہٹ جائے بہن میری تو خنجر کو چلانا، کچھ دیر میرے شانوں پہ رہنے دے میرا سر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، عباس کی خاطر مجھے پیغام یہ دے گی، شاید علی اکبر کی کوئی بات کرے گی، کچھ دیر تو رونے دے بہن بھائی کو مل کر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، مظلوم کی تصویر کو آنکھوں میں بسا کر، شبیر سے معصوم سکینہ کو ملا کر، وعدہ ہے چلی جائے گی واپس میری خبر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، کہنے لگا مولا سے ستمگار ہنس کر، پہلے بھی نکل آئی تھی یہ خیمے سے باہر، شہ نے کہا جب قتل ہوا تھا علی اکبر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، سر شے کا جدا کرنے میں مصروف نہیں تھا، کیا کہتا ہے مظلوم وہ سنتا ہی نہیں تھا، کہتا رہا سر تن سے جدا ہو کے بھی اکبر، زینب نکلائی ہے ذرا روک لے خنجر، سلام۔
صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد۔ مولانا اجازت، بار دیگر صلوات۔ اس قوم کے رونے کو یہی بات بڑی ہے، اس قوم کے رونے کو یہی بات بڑی ہے، زہرا بھرے دربار میں حق مانگ رہی ہے، اس قوم کے رونے کو تا دیر تڑپتے رہے، تعظیم کو لاشیں تا دیر تڑپتے رہے، تعظیم کو لاشیں یہ کون ضعیفہ ہے جو مقتل میں کھڑی ہے، رک رک کے ہوا خاک اڑاتی ہے جو رن میں، شاید علی اصغر کو بہن ڈھونڈ رہی ہے، برچھی علی اکبر کے سینے میں گڑی تھی، برچھی علی اکبر کے سینے میں گڑی تھی، پر چوٹ تو زینب کے کلیجے پہ پڑی ہے، سجاد تو چپ چاپ کھڑے ہیں سر بازار، زنجیر کی ایک ایک کڑی بول رہی ہے، بھڑکائی گئی تھی جو سقیفہ میں وہی آگ، سادات کے خیموں کو جلا کر ہی بجھی ہے، اس قوم کے رونے کو یہی بات بڑی ہے، زہرا بھرے دربار میں حق مانگ رہی ہے، اس قوم کے رونے کو آل و مومنو خلاصہ سنو اس بیان کا، بانوں کو پرسا دو 6 مہینے کی جان کا، پر حال کس زبان سے کہوں بے زبان کا، کیوں گر پڑا نہ پھٹ کے طبق، کیوں گر پڑا نہ پھٹ کے طبق آسمان کا، جھولے میں دی پناہ نہ ماں کے کنار میں، کاٹی عدو نے گردنے اصغر مزار، کاٹی عدو نے گردنے اصغر مزار، لپٹے ہوئے عزیزوں کے لاشوں سے تھے حرم، جو آہ سر شہیدوں کے ہونے لگے قلم، گن گن کے خود عمر نے کیے نیزوں پر علم، بولا ملازموں سے ابھی ایک سر، بولا ملازموں سے ابھی ایک سر ہے، اس دم تخیلات عتاب یزید ہے، عرضی میں لکھ چکا ہوں 72 شہید، عرضی میں لکھ چکا ہوں 72 شہید، پیٹیں گے اس بیان سے سب کودکو جوان، یہ تازہ واقعہ ہے غضب کی ہے داستان، کیوں خشک ہو گئی نا ستمگار کی زباں، بولا عمر تلاش کرو قبر، بولا عمر تلاش کرو قبر کا نشان، بچے کی قبر کھود کے سر کو قلم کرو، اکبر کے سر کے پاس سنا پر علم، اکبر کے سر کے پاس سنا پر علم، روتے تھے لاشہائے شہیداں پسب حرم، کیا دیکھتے ہیں آتا ہے ایک بانی ستم، نو کے سنا چبھوتا ہے مٹی میں دم بدم، فضا پکاری خیر کرے رب فضا پکاری خیر کرے رب ذوالکرا، یہ قبر ڈھونڈتا ہے کسی نازنین کی، نیزے سے دیکھتا ہے یہ نرمی زمین، یہ نیزے سے دیکھتا ہے یہ نرمی زمین، بانوں نے پوچھا دیدے دل سے بہا کے خون، جویا ہے کس کی قبر کا یہ ظالم زبوں، فضا پکاری خاک میرے منہ میں کیا کہوں، میں کس زبان سے صاحب تربت کا نام لوں، میں کس زبان سے صاحب تربت کا نام لوں، کھو دے گا مقبرہ 6 مہینے کی جان کا، مانگا ہے ابن سعد نے سر بے زبان، مانگا ہے ابن سعد نے سر بے زبان کا، پیکان جس گلے سے ابھی ہو چکا ہے پار، है उसी गले पा फिरेगी छुरी की धार। आराम गाह मुर्दों का है गोशाए मजार। बीबी के लख्ते दिल को वहाँ भी नहीं करा, बीबी के लख्ते दिल को वहाँ भी नहीं करा। ने फातिहा न फूल किसी नूरैन के होते ज़िबा कब्र में। बच्चे हुसैन होते हैं ज़िबा कब्र में, बच्चे हुसैन के।
सलवात पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद। Assalamu alaikum. Two really quick community announcements. One, tonight, inshallah, after the Majlis at IEC, there's a Majlis at Brother Alamdar Badr's house in Oakbrook Terrace. All Mu'mineen are requested to come. Also, tomorrow, Saturday, July 20th, at 1 p.m. with Salat al-Zohran, there'll be a Majlis at Brother Hassan Abadi's house in Bloomingdale. They'll be recited by Maulana Ruman Rizvi. Inshallah, again, that's at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Tonight we start a new Majalis series with Sayyid Bilal Rizvi. Inshallah, it will go till Sunday. Sayyid Bilal does not need an introduction in our community. He is one of the first English speakers to come to IEC Husaini over 10 years ago, and he's continued to come. And as we've developed as a community that has appreciated the English Majalis more and more, he has developed his skills more and more as he's traveled globally, nationally, and spoken all over on his different expertise, which include contemporary challenges, historical analysis, social issues, and Islamic belief and theology. We are honored here to have Sayyid Bilal again with our presence, and inshallah we'll be seeing him more and more throughout the years as he develops and as we develop as a community. For Sayyid Bilal, please recite a loud salawat. And with that, I'll request Sayyid Bilal Rizvi to come to the member and address the Majlis. Salawat par Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والاسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكادمية والحجج الردبية والجود الثقافية والنقابة النقبية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Fatima al-Zahra in particular, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Amongst the most common theological questions which is asked within the world today is the question as to whether there is room for other religions outside of Islam to be accepted in the eyes of God. That people often ask that if you have an individual who is a moral Christian or who is a moral Jew, and he follows his tradition, he acts righteously, he doesn't harm other individuals, then what is the issue with that individual being a Christian or a Jew? And what does the Quran say in regards to this? Because when you look at the Quran, on one side there are ayat of the Quran that make it clear that the only path towards Allah is Islam. For example, chapter 3 verse 19, it says, Inna deena indallah al-Islam. That verily the religion in the eyes of Allah is al-Islam. You find that another verse would say, chapter 3 verse 183, it says, وَمَن يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. That if anyone follows a religion other than Islam and seeks it, it will not be accepted from them. But at the same time, when you look in the Quran, there are certain other aspects of the Quran that if you examine them zahiran, from the outward, they may seem to imply that there is room for those who are outside of the religion of Islam for their a'mal and their actions to be accepted. For example, when you go to Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 62, Allah over there, He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ وَمَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَأَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That indeed those who are the believers and the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, if they believe in Allah and the last day and they act righteously, they will have an ajr in the near Allah, and they will have no fear or sorrow upon the day of judgment. Now, when we read such an ayat, you find that the picture which outwardly is painted may seem very different. And indeed tonight, the subject of analysis is to see that what is the perspective on this issue from the Quran and from the seerah of the Prophet and the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And we'll examine it in the following stages. Number one, does the Quran leave room for there being religions outside of Islam to be accepted by Allah? Number two, what is the difference between religious pluralism and social pluralism? Number three, what interactions did the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt have with non-Muslims? Number four, how did Banu Umayya use non-Muslims and in particular Christians to carry out their crusade in the Muslim world? And number five, which martyr on the day of Ashura was a non-Muslim that came to Islam because of Imam al-Hussein? And inshallah, we'll discuss upon these 5 points this issue. Now, the first point of analysis is to define what we are talking about. And the discussion is about religious pluralism. The definition of religious pluralism is that there are multiple religions that as long as a religion is revealed by Allah, it is acceptable for an individual to follow that religion, and that religion will lead them towards Allah, and they will be rewarded by Allah for following that religion. Now, the first point of those who hold this view, and there's people in the Muslim world who hold this view as well, is that in reality, this thought is an attack on the nabuwat of Rasulullah. Because those individuals who are saying that follow any of these religions, whether Christianity, Judaism, Islam, in other words, they're saying that the risala of Rasulullah is not a shart and a condition from salvation. But in reality, you find that is not the case. And if you look at these ayat, which I quoted at the beginning of the lecture, you find that they are not fair when they're quoting these ayat to prove their point. For example, you'll find that those who hold this school of thought, the first verse that they'll use to support their argument, and there's many Muslim proponents of this idea, is they'll use chapter 3, verse 19. And the verse they'll use is Inna Deena Indallahi al-Islam. That indeed the religion in the sight of Allah is al-Islam. So you may say to me that when you look at this ayat that's saying the religion is Islam, how do they use this ayat? They say over here that Islam is a verb and it is not a noun. You know, the meaning of Islam is to submit. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the middle of one of the battles, he was asked that what is Islam? And that individual, he hoped that the Imam would get into a long discourse. But Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Al-Islamu huwa taslim. In reality, Islam is submission. And yes, the word Islam means submission. But those individuals who argue upon this, we say to them, yes, you're correct in the definition. Islam means submission. But submission in each age, each time period has a different form. In the time of Adam, to submit to Adam was Islam. And in the time of Rasulullah, to submit to the Shariat of Rasulullah and to the Deen of Rasulullah, you find that is Islam and that is submission. You know, the second thing, those individuals, you reply to them is that when you use this ayat and you say that over here it is Islam in the lower case, as if the Arabic language has an uppercase and a lowercase, you say to them that why do you not complete the ayat? That if you're looking at an ayat of the Quran, you finish the entire ayat. The ayat, it doesn't stop by saying, Inna Deena Indallahi al-Islam. After that, it says, وَمَا اخْتَلَفُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. It says, O Prophet, those individuals who were given the book, they'd only differ with one another after knowledge had come to them. In other words, after you had shown them the truth, only then they began to differ with one another out of envy. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. And whoever denies the signs of Allah, indeed Allah is swift at his reckoning and his accounting. And then after that, it says over there, the Prophet, he is told to say to them that قُلْ فَإِنْ حَاجُوكَ, that if they argue with you, فَقُلْ أَسْلَمْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّهِ وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي, that I submit to Allah and those who follow me. وَقُلْ لِلَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ وَالْأُمِّيِّينَ أَأَسْلَمْتُمْ, have you submitted? So over here in this ayat, you find that if those individuals are saying that any of these paths are acceptable, then why is Rasulullah asking them, Aslamtum, have you submitted? And then Rasulullah is saying that those who are submitting towards the right path are my followers and myself. And after that, this verse, it concludes by saying, فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا, that if you submit, if you bring Islam upon yourself, only then you'll be guided. So you find over here that that verse being used to show that any religion is acceptable is something which is an unfair analysis. Now the second ayat that they'll use to prove this school of thought is they'll use chapter 2, verse 62. And when you examine this ayat, outwardly it seems convincing. Because the verse, it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, that those who believe, number one, وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا, number 2, the Jews. وَالنَّصَارَى, the Christians, number 3. وَالسَّابِئِينَ, the Sabians, number 4. That all of these different groups, مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَأَمِلَ صَالِحًا, that as long as, number 1, they believe in Allah, number 2, they believe in the next realm, they believe in the day of judgment, and number 3, they act righteously, فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ إِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. These individuals, they will be rewarded by Allah, they will not have any fear or grief on the day of judgment. Now when you examine this ayat outwardly, it may seem to say that all of these different groups, as long as they have amal saleh, they have iman in Allah, everything will be accepted. But the first reply that you give is that when we look at the Quran, we don't look at the Quran in isolation. We look at all of the ayat within the Quran on that subject. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahjul Balagha, sermon number 133, when he describes the Quran, he says, وَيَنْتِقُ بَعْدُهُ بِبَعْدٍ, that parts of this Quran speak for other parts. وَيَشْهَدُ بَعْدُهُ عَلَى بَعْدٍ, and parts of this Quran are a gava or a testimony or bear witness for other parts. You know, if we're going to take one ayat out of isolation, an individual can say that we don't have to pray. You may say, what do you mean we don't have to pray? The Quran says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, that woe be upon those who read salat. But you find that isn't the reality, that you look at all of the different verses on this issue. And when we look at the different ayat when it comes towards this issue, you find that they unequivocally show that belief in Rasulullah and what Rasulullah was sent is fundamental. For example, one ayat it says that, O Prophet, say to them, قُلْ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَإِسَاكَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَالْأَسْبَاطِ وَمَا أُوتِيَ مُوسَى وَإِيسَى وَالنَّبِيُّونَ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ. And then after that, it says, فَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. That, O Prophet, say to them that we believe in Allah, and we believe in what was sent down to us, as well as what was sent to Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, all of the prophets. We don't differentiate between any of them. You see, in this ayat, before it mentions any of the other anbiya, the first thing it mentions is that we believe in that kitab which was sent down to Rasulullah. And any path other than Islam which is sought, it won't be accepted. You know, this discussion isn't about individuals. This is about what is the barometer of truth. And in this regard, the Quran is showing that the barometer of truth is to believe in what was sent down towards Rasulullah, which is within the form of the Quran. You know, another ayat of the Quran, it says, وَقُلْ لِأَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ, that say to the people of the book, that if you had believed, وَاتَّقَوْا, and you had taqwa, لَكَفَرْنَ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ وَلَأَدْخَلْنَاهُمْ جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ وَلَوْ أَقَامُوا التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. It says over there that say to the people of the book that if you feared Allah and you applied the Torah and the Injil, then we will forgive you of your wrongdoings and we will admit you into paradise. So in other words, this ayat is showing is that what the original message of the Torah and the Injil and the Quran says, that within the Torah, the name of Rasulullah is there, بِإِسْمِهِ Ahmad. You find in that sense, if they believe in what it is stated, then you find, then they will only be rewarded by Allah. So the question is that when you still look at this ayat, then why is this ayat saying that anyone who is a Jew or a Christian, as long as they believe in Allah and the last day, that they will be rewarded? The ayat, when you look at it, it says over there, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Before it mentions the Christians and the Jews, it says there is a group of individuals who are sahibi iman, which is referring towards the Muslims. In other words, this ayat's understanding is that it is saying, O human beings, it is not enough for you to put a title upon yourself. You know, another verse of the Quran, it says that the Jews and the Christians, they say, لَن يَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةِ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى, that the only ones who will enter paradise are those who are Jews or Christians, and no one else will enter paradise. But the Quran is showing that this title which you have put on yourself, just having this title is not enough. There needs to be an inner reality which is beyond that title. So you find this is from the perspective of the Quran. But now the second level of this discussion is that yes, although theologically the barometer of truth is Rasulullah, and what Rasulullah has given, including the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you find now the question is that does this mean that you cannot live in harmony with other individuals? You know, although the Quran rejects religious pluralism, you find that the idea of social pluralism is there, that within the Islamic State, there were non-Muslims who lived within the Islamic State, whether it was in the time of Rasulullah or Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, one of the most famous incidents in the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen is that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sees a Christian man who is begging upon the street. And he says to those who are with him that what is this man doing? They said that this man has become blind and there is no one to support him, thus he is begging. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that how strange is it that when this individual was young, we used him to establish the state, but now when this man is elderly, you find that there is no one here to help him. So you find in terms of harmony, the idea of living in harmony is there even, in the advice of Luqman to his son. Luqman, when he speaks to his son, he says to his son that, Ya bunayya la tushrik billah, that do not ascribe partners to Allah. And then as he's going down the list of advice, he is speaking that when it comes to the parents, وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي شَيْئًا مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ, that if your parents, they urge you to ascribe partners towards Allah, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا, don't obey them. In other words, that there is no religious pluralism, that one cannot be an idolater at the same time believe in Tawheed. On one side they say love Ahlul Bayt, on the other side they love the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. You find there's no reconciliation between kufr and iman in this manner. But it says فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا, but it says وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, that even though you do not listen to them in that regard, accompany those parents who are mushrik in a ma'roof and a kind manner within this world. So you find that this reality is seen, and it is seen by the fact that when you look at the seerah of Rasulullah and the imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, you find that there were many interactions between non-Muslims and Rasulullah and the imams of Ahlul Bayt. For example, it's stated when Rasulullah was young, he goes on a journey with his uncle, with Abu Talib alayhi salam. And when he goes upon this journey towards Syria, they go towards a monastery. And within that monastery, a man, as soon as he sees Rasulullah, he comes out. And he says that, what is the name of this child? Abu Talib says his name is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says that his name is Muhammad. And at that point, the man says that keep him away from the Jews of your land, because this is that very individual in the Torah, his name is mentioned. At that point, Abu Talib says, how do you know that this is that individual? He says that I saw him eating from this tree. This tree which was dead for a number of years, the moment he came back, this tree, it came back to life. And one of the signs and the alamat of this prophet is that he would eat from this tree, and that individual is the one who will be that prophet who is waited for. You find this individual was a Christian man by the name of Buhayra. And in that manner, he recognized this reality of Rasulullah. Now, another example that we find in history, one of the most famous encounters, is that day when the Christians of Najran, they come towards Medina. And when they come towards Medina, it's stated that they come with silk, they come with gold ornaments, they come with the finest of fine clothing. And as soon as they come, it's stated that Rasulullah doesn't pay any attention to them. They begin to think to themselves that what type of man is this? Is that we have come as his guests, but he pays no attention towards us. So those Christians of Najran, according to the hadith, there were three main people within the Christians of Najran. There was an individual by the name of Al-Ahtam, there was an individual by the name of As-Sayyid, and there was an individual by the name of Al-Aqib, whose title was Abdul Masih. So you find that these individuals, they leave the mosque of Rasulullah, and on the way out, they run into Uthman ibn Affan and Abdurrahman ibn Auf. And they say that why is it that Muhammad didn't pay any attention towards us? They replied by saying that we don't know, but there is a young man by the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib who knows what Muhammad is thinking. In other words, they recognize that if there was anyone who was familiar with the thoughts of Rasulullah, then it's Amir al-Mu'mineen. When they go to Amir al-Mu'mineen says is that you have come representing your religion wearing this type of garment. That there is silk, there is ornaments of gold. If you come with humility, we will accept you. And in that manner they come. And when they come, they begin to discuss and they say, oh Muhammad, what is it that you invite us to? And the Prophet says, I invite you to Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And I invite you to believe that I am his messenger and that Jesus was the servant of Allah who ate food, who slept, who was the makhluk and the creation of Allah. At that point they say, then why is it that he doesn't have a father? Then the Quran chapter 3 verse 59 is revealed unto Rasulullah, and it says, Inna matala Isa indallah ka matali Adam khalaqahu min turab thumma qala lahu kun fayakun. That the example of Isa is like the example of Adam. That Allah created him from dust, he said to him, be, and he became. In other words, if your argument is that Isa does not have a father, so he is Allah or he is Ibn Allah, then Adam does not have a father or a mother. But after all of those discussions, you find that Rasulullah says that tomorrow we'll engage in a mubahala. That we will come and you will come, and the la'na and the curse of Allah will be upon those who are wrong. You know, those Christians, after they had this dialogue, they began to discuss with one another. And they asked Abdul Masih, who is considered to be the eldest of them, they said, oh Abdul Masih, what do you think? Should we engage in a mubahala with this individual? Abdul Masih, he says, I know that if anyone engages with a mubahala, with a prophet of Allah, then they won't remain upon the face of this earth. So tomorrow, let's see who he comes with, and in that manner, we'll gauge the situation. When Rasulullah comes out upon that day, within the right arm of Rasulullah is Imam al-Husain. In the left hand, he is holding the hand of Imam al-Hasan. Behind him is Fatimatu Zahra, behind her is Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, even the way Fatimatu Zahra walked upon that day, that in between Risalat and Imamat Fatimatu Zahra stood on the day of Mubahala. That when a Rasulullah would take his footstep, the foot of Fatima would step on the footstep of Risalat. And then when the footstep of Fatima would be upon the earth, the footstep of Imamat in the form of Amir al-Mu'mineen would cover the tracks of Fatimatu Zahra. And the moment the Christians, they see these individuals, Abdul Masih, he says that Wallahi, that by Allah, that by God, La ra'ayna wujuhan, that we have seen faces that lo sa'alahu Allah, that if they ask Allah an yuzila jabalan min makani fa yuzila, that if they ask a mountain to move from its places, that mountain would move from that place. So you find in reality, one of these great incidents within the history of Islam, which was used to establish the truth of the religion, came as an interaction with a group of non-Muslims. You know, even Rasulullah, the 6th year after Hijrah, you find that Rasulullah, after a couple years after that, he begins to gain strength in the Arabian Peninsula. And after he conquers Mecca, there were many individuals that Rasulullah he would write to. That Rasulullah wrote 25 letters to different heads of the states and different tribes to invite them towards Islam. You know, those individuals who say Christianity, Judaism, Islam, it doesn't matter which one you follow. I say if it doesn't matter, then why is Rasulullah doing tabligh and inviting them to Islam? That this is something which is in contradiction with the seerah of Rasulullah. So you find in that manner there were many such encounters. But in the history of Islam, even though there were positive encounters with non-Muslims, you find at the same time there were many negative encounters as well. For example, it's well known that many of the Jews in Medina would cause discord in Medina. For example, there was one Jewish individual. He sees that the Aus and the Khazraj, they were the two main Jewish tribes in Medina. In Medina, there were three main Jewish tribes, and there were two main Arab tribes. The two main Arab tribes were the Aus and the Khazraj. And they fought wars for years after year. But when a Rasulullah comes, there's peace. So you find that one Jewish man in Medina, he begins to say that this is the same tribe that killed your forefathers. And he says the same to the other side, and you find that there's discord which is created. But when you look in the history of Islam, there is no group which use non-Muslims to carry out their mission more than Muawiyah and the house of Muawiyah. You may say, in what sense? I say, when you look in the house of Muawiyah, you find that there were a number of Christians who were ready to do the work which a Muslim would not do against those who were close and well known within the religion of Islam. For example, the first of those figures is Sarjun. Sarjun was the advisor of Muawiyah, who later became the advisor of Yazid. You know, when Muslim bin Aqil, he goes towards Kufa, and the situation in Kufa is such that there's many followers who are being gained on the side of Muslim bin Aqil. Sarjun is the one who gave the advice that sent Ibn Ziyad towards Kufa. You know, the son of Sarjun is the first individual in the history of Christianity to write a book against Islam. His son's name is John Damascene, or John of Damascus. And within that book, he does not even call Islam a separate religion, but he says that this group is the Ishmaelite heresy. In other words, they are a firqa of Christianity who is carrying out bid'ah, and a group which has gone off the right path. In that regard, you find this is an individual who is being kept around by Muawiyah and Yazid within the rule. A second example is an individual by the name of Ghayth ibn Ghiyath. And the title of this individual was Al-Akhtal. You know, Ghayth ibn Ghiyath was the chief poet of Banu Umayya. The chief poet of Banu Umayya was a Christian man. And this Christian man would be asked to write poetry which was propaganda against Amir al-Mu'mineen. In one of those lines of poetry, he says that neither has Hijaz nor the land of Iraq benefited from Ali ibn Abi Talib. So I will tell you something by which you will gain blessing. And that is أن تركت ذكر علي وإترته, that you leave the mention of Ali and the family of Ali. For there is no hand which Ali has in the Khilafat. So you find that this type of line, it would have been difficult even at that time for a Muslim to write such a line. Because a Muslim naturally, that even though the propaganda was there, you find it is somebody who was a non-Muslim who came to the forefront to write this line. So this is the second example. The third example of an individual who was a non-Muslim that was used within the reign of Banu Umayya was an individual by the name of Ibn Uthal. You know, Ibn Uthal was the chief toxicologist of Banu Umayya. In other words, he was the official physician of Banu Umayya. in the rule of Muawiyah and Yazid. And it's very famous that Yazid and Muawiyah, they would spend time drinking with Ibn Utal. You know, one of the things that we see amongst the Umayyads is that they brought the Roman tradition of poisoning their adversaries. That when you look in the regime of Banu Umayya, this is something which was common. For example, Ammar ibn Yasir is killed in Siffin. You find Malik al-Ashtar is killed where? Malik al-Ashtar is an individual who was poisoned. And when Malik is poisoned, you find that Muawiyah, he says a famous line, that honey is also from Junud Allah, it is also from the army of Allah. That he had administered poison into the honey, it was given towards him, he drank it, and he was killed. You find that this idea of poisoning and this administering of poisoning was introduced by an individual who was a Christian by the name of Ibn Utal. The same thing when you look at Imam al-Hasan. Imam al-Hasan is poisoned by his wife Ju'da. The individual who is mixing the poison, giving this idea, is a non-Muslim. And you find this is the reality of Islam. The fourth individual who Banu Umayya would use as well is the wife of Muawiyah. The wife of Muawiyah, her name is Maysoon ibn Bahdal. Maysoon ibn Bahdal was a Christian. And you find that she is from the Taghlib tribe, which is a majority Christian tribe. This lady is the wife of Muawiyah and the mother of Yazid. Now, when you look at the poetry of Yazid, and when Yazid says in a line of poetry, فَإِنْ حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيَّ عَلَى دِينِ أَحْمَدِي لَأَخُذُهَا عَلَى دِينِ الْمَسِيحِ ibn Maryami, that if something is haram for me on the Shariat of Ahmad, then I will take them on the Shariat of Jesus, the son of Mary. You find, where is this influence coming from? This influence is coming from his mother. And the same influence is seen when Sayyida Zainab goes to the court of Yazid. And the moment Ahlul Bayt enter that courtyard, Yazidi begins to say lines that if somebody was truly a Muslim, they would never say those lines. That Layta ashyakhi bi badrin shahidu jaza al-khazraj min waqil asal. He says that I wish that my elders from Badr were here to see how I have made the Khazraj go into panic. That if Badr is a battle, it is a battle between Islam and Kufr. And over here, the ancestors of Yazid are on what? They're on the side of Kufr. And he says, لَقَدْ قَتَلْنَا الْقَرْمِ مِنْ سَادَاتِكُمْ, that we have killed the best of their leaders. وَأَعْدَلْنَا مَيْلَ بَدْرٍ فَاعْتَدَلْ, and today we have taken revenge for Badr. You see, when you look in the history of Islam, Imam al-Hussein wasn't the first person who was killed by Banu Umayya. Amr ibn Hamak al-Khuzai, a companion of Rasulullah, killed by Banu Umayya. Ammar ibn Yasir, Malik al-Ashtar, other individuals are killed. But it's only at the killing of Hussein, Yazid says that today we have taken revenge for Badr. In other words, what this is a testimony against him. That he himself recognizes that in the way Rasulullah represented Islam on the day of Badr, if there is any wujud who represents Islam today, it is Hussein. And it is only through the killing of Hussein that we have taken revenge upon Badr. And then as he's going through these lines of poetry, as he comes to the end, he says, وَلَعِبَتْ هَاشِمْ بِالْمُلْكِ وَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلْ. That Banu Hashim only played with this kingdom. That there was no news from heaven which came, and there was no revelation on the house of Banu Hashim. So you find that when an individual is brought up in an environment which is not an Islamic environment, it is an environment of outsiders, only then they'll say these lines which demonstrate that they themselves are outsiders. But at the same time, you find that Ahlul Bayt were those individuals. That whether you were within the Muslim world or whether you were outside of it, those who came in contact with these groups of individuals, oftentimes they were given guidance. And in that regard, we see this in the head of Imam al-Hussein as it was being taken. You know, the head of Imam al-Hussein, On the day of Ashura, it was sent from Karbala to Kufa. The rest of Ahlul Bayt leave on the 11th of Muharram. Umar bin Saad, he puts two individuals in charge of the head of Imam al-Hussein. The first is Khuli, and the second is Hamid ibn Muslim. The day that the head, it reaches Kufa, it stated it reaches late at night. And Ibn Ziyad's palace was closed. So Khuli, he takes the head of the Imam into his house and he places it on a washing basin. When the wife of Khuli, she comes, she says, "Oh Khuli, who is this?" Khuli says that this is the head of Hussein. At that point, the wife of Khuli says that men, they bring jewelry for their wives, but you have brought the head of the son of the daughter of Rasulullah. I will never sleep upon the bed of a man who carried out such an action. So you see, this head, it was taken to Kufa. And then after that, the rest of the heads were brought upon the next day. And there's one narration that Qasim ibn Asbagh ibn Nabata, he narrates as the heads were coming in. You know, he's the son of the famous companion of Imam Ali, Asbagh bin Nabata. He says that when the army of Umar bin Saad came to Kufa, all of the women were upon one rope. And all of the heads were upon a spear. But he says that as I was looking at the caravan, I saw that there was one head which was not upon a spear. That head was tied to the tail of a horse. And that head would drag across the street of Kufa. And every time the horse would stop, that head would go and it would hit the back of the leg of the horse. So I asked the army of Umar ibn Saad that whose head is this? At that moment, Harmala, he says that this is the head of Aba Fadl Abbas. After that, you find that the heads of the Shuhada in Kufa, and Ibn Ziyad, he takes a stick. He sees the teeth of Aba Abdullah, and he begins to hit the teeth of Aba Abdullah with that stick. Then 40 individuals are ordered to take the heads towards Sham. You know, as the heads are being taken towards Sham, they go past a Christian monastery. And in that Christian monastery, there's one individual, he says that I saw that there was nur which was coming from this head. So I went up to them and I said, "Man hada," that who is this? They said, "Harabna al-Husayn," that we fought Hussein and this is the head of Hussein. The moment they said Hussein, that Christian monk, he says, "Ibnu bint nabiyakum," that this is the son of the daughter of your prophet. And he says, "Tabban lakum," that may you be destroyed. لو كان لعيسى ابن مريم ابنا لحملناه على أهداكنا, that if Isa the son of Mary had a son, we would keep that son upon our eyes. We wouldn't let what you have done happen. After that, the man says that I have an amount of money. I'll give it to all of it to you. The only thing I want is that I want this head for the night. They said that we gave him the head. That Christian man, he puts kafur upon the head. And he puts a cloth upon the head. The army of Umar bin Saad says that when we came to get the head the next morning, we saw that man who was speaking to the head. And you know what he was saying? He was saying, "Wallahi ya ras," that, "O head, la amliku shay'an illa nafsi." The only thing I own is myself. "Washhad li ghadan," that bear witness for me tomorrow in front of your grandfather Rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. You see, this is the Ahlul Bayt of Rasulullah. And upon these days, we remember the journey of Ahlul Bayt from Karbala towards Kufa. You know, when the 11th of Muharram it began, Sayyida Zainab, she said to Shimar that my only request is that you don't take the women through the Maktal, that don't take them through the battlefield. Because how is Layla going to see the body of Ali Akbar? And how is Kulthum going to see the cut arms of Abbas? And what will Farwa do at the broken pieces of Qasim? But Shimar, he takes them in between the battlefield. And Layla would go to Ali Akbar and Farwa would go to Qasim. But it's stated that as each of these women would go towards their beloved, there were two women that only went to the body of Hussein. The first of those was Sayyida Zainab. When Sayyida Zainab, she sees the body of Aba Abdullah, she says, Anta akhi, that is this my brother? And then she begins to say, Assalamu ala al-Husayn al-Madloom, al-Maqtul, al-Majrur al-Adshana. She says, Salam be upon my Madloom brother Hussein, the one who was wounded thirsty. But then after that she says a line, al-Madboom al-Qafa fi yawmi Ashura. She says, my brother is the one that when they cut his neck on the day of Ashura, from the front they didn't cut the neck of Hussein. Al-Madboom and al-Qafa, from the back of the neck they cut my brother. Then she looks to the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada and she says, oh brother, I want to kiss your body, but there isn't a spot which isn't wounded. She looks towards Medina. She says, Ya Jadda, Ya Rasulallah, Hada al-Husayn al-Murammalu bid-Dima. That, oh Rasulallah, this is your Hussein who is covered in blood. You know, the second woman who only went to the body of Imam al-Hussein was a Rabab. When a Rabab sees the body of Imam al-Hussein, she says, oh my master, if I had a hijab, I would give that hijab as your kafan. And if my arms weren't tied, my arms would cover your body from the shade. You know, what did Imam al-Zaman say in Ziyaratul Nahiya? Imam al-Zaman in Ziyaratul Nahiya, he described how the arms of the women of Ahlul Bayt were tied. And he said, وَأَيْدِيهِمْ مَغْلُولَةٌ إِلَى الْأَعْنَاقِ. He says these women, when their arms were tied, they weren't just tied next to each other, but they were tied towards their necks and their arms would be held in this manner. You see, in this manner, the caravan of Ahlul Bayt is taken towards Kufa. But one of the most famous musibah of Kufa is that when the people of Kufa, they would come to Ahlul Bayt, they would say that we have brought sadaqah. And the moment they would say that, Sayyida Zainab would say, sadaqah is haram upon our household. But as they were doing this, there was one lady who comes to Sayyida Zainab. And she says, oh Zainab, this girl over here pointing towards Sakina, that have her make dua for us. At that moment, Sakina, she raises her hand. And that lady, she says that make dua, that in the way that you are asir and a captive, that my children are never captives like you. And then after that she says, make dua that I get to go to Medina. The moment she says Medina, Sayyida Zainab, she says, oh lady, who do you know in Medina? She says that I know the house of Ali, I know the house of Fatima. Sayyida Zainab says, who do you know in the house of Ali and Fatima? Fatima. She says that I know Zainab, I know Hussein, that what did Karbala do to Sayyida Zainab that she didn't recognize Sayyida Zainab? At that point, Zainab, she says that, oh Habiba, that is the head of Hussein, that is the head of Abbas, and oh Habiba, I am Zainab. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin. سيعلم الذين ظلموا ويا منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم حسين.
چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. واہ جابا کہہ رہی تھی سیدہ کی لاڈلی شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. کرسیوں پر قاتلان شاہ تھے بیٹھے ہوئے سایہ دیوار میں تھے سب حرم لیکن کھڑے با وفا کو ڈھونڈتی تھی دخترے شیر جری شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. شمری دیکھا تو سکینہ سہم کر رونے لگی دور ہو جا شمر فضا چیخ کر کہنے لگی خوف سے مرجھا رہی ہے باغ عصمت کی کلی شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. تشت میں بابا کے سر پر جب پڑی اس کی نظر اپنے زخموں کی رہی نہ پھر سکینہ کو خبر دوڑتی بابا کی جانب لاڈلی بیٹی چلی شام کے دربار میں. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. کون ہے زینب پکارا جس گھڑی فرعون شام ہائے غربت کہہ کے اٹھا تھا میرا قیدی امام اشک خون کے رو رہا تھا شاہ کا بیٹا علی شام کے دربار نے. چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی شام کے دربار میں. حکم حاکم نے سنایا مار دو بیمار کو
اس جگہ ہی قتل کر دو قافلہ سالار کو. گر پڑی عابد کے اوپر ہائے نازوں سے پلی. شام کے دربار میں نام سن کر رو پڑی بنتے علی. شام کے دربار میں جب علی اکبر کے سر کو سامنے لایا گیا، ہو گئی بے ہوش ماں سے نہ سنبھل پایا گیا. دختران فاطمہ پڑھنے لگی نادے علی. شام کے دربار میں چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی. شام کے دربار میں واہ جابا کہہ رہی تھی سیدہ کی لاڈلی. شام کے دربار میں چادروں کا نام سن کر رو پڑی بنت علی. شام کے دربار میں یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى ناصح الأمين، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم يا تسة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن وكعبة الإيمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله تعالى مخرجه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.